beyond the nature of this manual. The instrument that is the practitioner themselves. This is the third and final volume of the compendium. Codex 7 concerned itself with the wand, the instrument of projection, of directed will, of the practitioner's outward reach into the world. Codex 8 concerned itself with the appointed things, the vessels, the blades, the garments, the altar, the circle, and every other tool the practitioner uses to shape, contain, and define the working space. This codex concerns itself with the practitioner. Not the tools they hold, but the body that holds them. Not the instruments they wield, but the nervous system, the breath, the posture, the trained attention, and the accumulated physical and mental capacities that make the wielding possible in the first place. This is the manual on the human being as instrument, the substrate upon which the entire practice depends, and without which every tool, every procedure, every working described in the preceding volumes is nothing but theory. The organization of this manual follows the practitioner's own architecture. It begins with the body, the physical structure that holds the wand, that stands before the altar, that walks the circle. It moves through the senses, the eyes, the ears, the hands, the nose, the kinesthetic awareness of the body and space. It addresses the mind, attention, visualization, memory, the formation of intent. It discusses energy management, how to recognize depletion, how to recover, when to rest. It traces the developmental arc, what the novice's body and mind are capable of, what changes after a decade, what adaptations the elder practitioner makes. And it ends with ethics, the practitioner's sovereignty over their own nervous system, and the boundaries that no tradition, no teacher, and no working has the right to violate. This manual is written with the same assumption that governs the first two volumes, that the practice is not metaphor, not theater, not costume. It is a discipline, a set of techniques for coupling the human nervous system with shaped tools and trained procedures, and using that coupling to produce specific, reproducible effects. The body is not symbolic. The breath is not symbolic. The ache in the wrist after an hour of wand work is not symbolic. It is data. And the practitioner who learns to read that data, who understands what their body is telling them, what their nervous system is capable of, and what the limits of both are, is a practitioner who can work safely, effectively, and for the long term. Section the first. Posture and stance. The architecture of standing, sitting, and kneeling. The practitioner's posture, the specific arrangement of spine, pelvis, shoulders, and feet, is not incidental to the working. It is foundational. Posture affects breath. It affects the flow of bioelectrical activity through the nervous system. It affects the practitioner's balance, their endurance, and their ability to hold the wand or the sword or any other instrument steady for extended periods. A working performed in poor posture is not merely uncomfortable. It is compromised at the level of the body's own mechanics, and the practitioner who does not attend to this will find, over time, that their capacity to work degrades, not because their intent is weakened, not because the tools have failed, but because the body itself has been strained beyond what it can sustain. Standing. The standing posture used in most ritual workings is not the casual stance of ordinary life. It is a specific configuration, feet shoulder width apart or slightly wider, knees soft, not locked, pelvis neutral, not tilted forward or back, spine long, as though a thread were pulling the crown of the head upward, shoulders down and back, not hunched, not raised, arms relaxed at the sides, or held in a specific gesture as the working requires. This posture distributes the body's weight evenly across both feet, roots the practitioner to the ground through the soles, and allows the spine to function as the central axis, the column around which all other movement is organized. The feet are the practitioner's grounding points. The weight should rest primarily on the heels and the balls of the feet, with the toes relaxed and the arches active. The practitioner who stands on locked knees, or who shifts their weight forward onto the toes, or who allows one hip to drop and the weight to pull into one leg, is creating instability, not merely physical instability, which will manifest as wobbling or fatigue, but energetic instability, which will manifest as a diffuse and grounded quality in the working itself. The grounded practitioner feels heavy, stable, immovable. The ungrounded practitioner feels light, floaty, easily distracted. The differences in the feet. The spine's alignment is the second critical element. The cervical spine, the neck, the thoracic spine, the upper and mid-back, and the lumbar spine, the lower back, should maintain their natural curves, not flattened, not exaggerated. The head should sit directly over the shoulders, with the chin neither lifted nor tucked. The practitioner who cranes their neck forward, or who slumps in the upper back, or who tilts the pelvis and creates an excessive arch in the lower back, is placing strain on the muscles and ligaments that support the spine, and that strain accumulates. After 10 minutes, it is fatigue. After an hour, it is pain. After years, it is chronic injury. Sitting. Seated workings, meditation, scrying, extended visualizations, require a different posture but the same principles. The practitioner may sit cross-legged on the floor, kneeling with the hips resting on the heels or on a cushion, or seated on a chair with the feet flat on the ground. In all cases, the spine should be upright, the pelvis neutral, and the shoulders relaxed. The common error in seated postures is the collapse of the lower back, the slump that occurs when the practitioner allows the pelvis to tilt backward and the lumbar spine to round. This collapse compresses the diaphragm, restricts the breath, and produces a quality of dullness in the mind that the practitioner may mistake for calm, but which is actually a form of low-grade hypoxia, insufficient oxygen reaching the brain because the lungs cannot expand fully. The use of cushions, benches, or chairs to support the seated posture is not a concession to weakness. It is practical. The practitioner whose hamstrings are tight will not be able to sit cross-legged on the floor with an upright spine unless they elevate the hips on a cushion. The practitioner whose knees are injured will not be able to kneel without pain unless they place a support beneath the hips. The goal is not to force the body into a shape it cannot sustain. The goal is to find the shape that the body can sustain comfortably for the duration of the working and to use whatever supports are necessary to achieve it. Kneeling. The kneeling posture, on one knee or both, is used in specific workings where the practitioner needs to be low to the ground, or where the tradition calls for a gesture of humility or of grounding. Kneeling is hard on the knees. This is not opinion. It is anatomy. The knee joint is not designed to bear weight in a flexed position for extended periods, and the practitioner who kneels on a hard surface without padding will, within minutes, feel the sharp discomfort of bone pressing against floor. The use of a cushion, a folded cloth, or a padded kneeler is essential. The practitioner who kneels regularly, for hours, over years, and does not protect their knees will develop chronic pain, and in severe cases, permanent damage to the cartilage and the ligaments of the joint. Keepers note the practitioner who experiences sharp, sudden pain in any posture, standing, sitting, or kneeling, should stop immediately. Sharp pain is the body's alarm signal, and it indicates that something is being compressed, strained, or damaged beyond safe limits. The practitioner should adjust to posture, use a support, or choose a different position entirely. No working is worth permanent injury. Section the second. The hands. Grip, flexibility, callus, and the instrument of contact. The hands are the practitioner's primary point of contact with the tools. Every wand, every atham, every cup, every staff passes through the hands before it performs its function. The quality of that contact, the firmness of the grip, the flexibility of the fingers, the sensitivity of the palm, determines, in large measure, how well the tool performs. A hand that is weak, stiff, or numb cannot hold a wand with the precision required for fine work. A hand that is overly tense cannot release the tool when the working demands it. The training of the hands is therefore not optional. It is as essential as the training of attention or the training of breath, and the practitioner who neglects it will find their capacity limited not by their knowledge or their intent, but by the simple mechanical fact that their hands cannot do what the working requires. Grip strength. Grip strength, the ability to hold an object firmly without strain, for extended periods, is built for use. The practitioner who works with the wand regularly, who holds it for 15 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour at a time, will develop grip strength naturally. The muscles of the forearm, the tendons that run through the palm and into the fingers, and the small intrinsic muscles of the hand all strengthen through sustained holding. But grip strength can also be trained deliberately, outside of formal workings, through the use of grip trainers, stress balls, or the simple practice of hanging from a bar with the full weight of the body supported by the hands. The practitioner who cannot hold the wand for the duration of a working without their fingers cramping or their hand shaking should train their grip until they can. Flexibility. Flexibility in the hands, the range of motion in the fingers, the wrist, and the thumb, is equally important. A stiff hand cannot adjust its grip quickly. It cannot rotate the wand smoothly through the complex motions that some workings require. And it cannot release tension when the working is complete. The practitioner should stretch the hands daily, extending the fingers back toward the wrist, flexing them forward into a fist, spreading them wide, circling the wrists in both directions. These are not elaborate stretches. They take 2 minutes. But performed consistently, they maintain the suppleness of the joints and the tendons, and they prevent the gradual stiffening that comes with age and with repetitive use. Callus formation. The practitioner who works with wooden tools, wands, staves, atoms with wooden handles, will develop calluses. This is not a sign of poor technique. It is the body's adaptation to repeated friction. The skin on the palm and the fingers thickens in the places where the tool presses most consistently, forming a protective layer of keratinized tissue that reduces sensitivity in those specific areas. Some practitioners see this as a problem, a loss of the hand sensitivity, a dulling of the tactile feedback that the wand provides. Others see it as a mark of dedication, a badge of hours spent in practice. Both perspectives are valid. What matters is that the practitioner understands the trade-off. Callus reduces pain and prevents blistering. But it also reduces the hand's ability to feel subtle vibrations, to detect minute changes in the wand's temperature or texture. The practitioner must decide which they value more, and they must accept the consequences of that decision. Ambidexterity. Most practitioners hold the wand in their dominant hand. This is natural. It is efficient. And for most workings, it is sufficient. But the practitioner who trains their non-dominant hand to hold the wand with the same competence as their dominant hand has expanded their repertoire significantly. They can work with a wand in one hand and an atham in the other. They can switch hands mid-working without loss of control. And they can continue working if the dominant hand is injured, fatigued, or otherwise unavailable. The training of the non-dominant hand is slow and frustrating. The hand does not respond with the same fluidity, the same precision, the same automatic correctness that the dominant hand provides. But the training is worth the effort, and the practitioner who commits to it, who practices holding, moving, and working with the wand in the non-dominant hand for 10 minutes a day, every day, for 6 months, will find that the gap between the two hands narrows considerably. Section the third. The breath. Diaphragm, rhythm, retention, and the metronome of the working. Breath is the practitioner's most fundamental autonomic process that can be brought under conscious control. The heart beats whether the practitioner attends to it or not. Digestion proceeds whether the practitioner wills it or not. But breath, the expansion and contraction of the lungs, the movement of air in and out of the body, can be slowed, quickened, paused, or shaped at will. This makes breath the practitioner's primary tool for regulating the nervous system, for modulating arousal, for synchronizing the body's rhythms with the rhythms of the working, and for managing the energetic output that the wand and the other instruments require. The practitioner who does not train their breath is working with one hand tied. The practitioner who has trained their breath has access to a degree of control over their own internal state that no external tool can provide. Diaphragmatic breathing. Most people, most of the time, breathe shallowly. The breath moves in and out of the upper chest, the shoulders rise and fall, and the diaphragm, the dome-shaped muscle that sits beneath the lungs and separates the chest cavity from the abdominal cavity, barely moves at all. This is inefficient. Shallow breathing uses only the upper portion of the lungs, delivers less oxygen to the blood, and keeps the nervous system in a state of mild activation that the practitioner may not consciously notice, but that affects their focus, their calmness, and their endurance. Diaphragmatic breathing, breathing that moves the diaphragm down on the inhalation, allowing the belly to expand, and back up on the exhalation, allowing the belly to contract, uses the full capacity of the lungs, delivers more oxygen, and activates the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the body's rest and digest mode. The practitioner learns diaphragmatic breathing by lying on their back, placing one hand on the chest and one hand on the belly, and breathing in such a way that the hand on the belly rises while the hand on the chest remains still. This is not natural for most people. It requires attention and practice. But once the pattern is learned, it becomes automatic, and the practitioner can breathe diaphragmatically while standing, sitting, or moving. The working performed with diaphragmatic breath is steadier, calmer, and more sustainable than the working performed with shallow chest breathing. The difference is measurable in the practitioner's heart rate, their blood pressure, and the electrical activity of their brain. Breath is rhythm. Breath is the metronome of the working. The practitioner who breathes slowly establishes a slow rhythm, a pace that is deliberate and hurried, grounded. The practitioner who breathes quickly establishes a quick rhythm, a pace that is urgent, energized, sharp. The practitioner who matches the rhythm of their breath to the rhythm of the working, the sweep of the wand, the walking of the circle, the repetition of an invocation, creates coherence between the body and the action, and that coherence is felt as a sense of flow, of rightness, of the working proceeding smoothly rather than in fits and starts. The breath can also be used to mark transitions, a deep inhalation before the working begins, a slow exhalation as the circle is cast, a pause in the breath at the moment of release. These are not arbitrary choices. They are functional cues, signals to the nervous system that a change is happening, that attention is required, that the working has entered a new phase. Retention and hyperventilation. Breath retention, holding the breath after the inhalation or after the exhalation, is used in some traditions to produce specific alterations in consciousness. The physiology is straightforward. Holding the breath increases the carbon dioxide in the blood, which changes the blood's pH, which affects the nervous system's activity. Brief retention, 5 to 10 seconds, produces a mild sense of focus and of inner pressure. Extended retention, 30 seconds or longer, produces lightheadedness, tingling in the extremities, and, if pushed further, a dissociative state that some practitioners find useful for scrying or for accessing non-ordinary mental states. The risks are equally straightforward. Extended retention starves the brain of oxygen, and if pushed too far, it produces unconsciousness. The practitioner who experiments with breath retention should do so cautiously, with awareness of the body's signals, and should never push to the point of dizziness or blackout. Hyperventilation, rapid, shallow breathing, produces the opposite effect. It lowers the carbon dioxide in the blood, which also changes the blood's pH, but in the opposite direction. The result is increased arousal, tingling in the hands and face, and a sense of heightened energy that can be harnessed for workings that require intensity and force. But hyperventilation is more dangerous than retention, because it produces sensations that can escalate into panic if the practitioner is not prepared for them. The practitioner who hyperventilates deliberately should do so for brief periods, 30 seconds to a minute, with a clear intent, and should return to slow, diaphragmatic breathing as soon as the working is complete. A warning breath is powerful precisely because it affects the nervous system directly and immediately. The practitioner who plays with breath techniques without understanding their effects, or who uses them to produce extreme states without a clear purpose, is not exploring. They are risking their own safety. Oxygen deprivation, carbon dioxide toxicity, and panic states are all real possibilities, and they can cause lasting harm. Use breath techniques with respect, with caution, and with the understanding that the body's limits are not negotiable. Section the 4th. The voice. The larynx is instrument, pitch, resonance, volume, and fatigue. The voice is the practitioner's instrument of sound, the means by which invocations are spoken, tones are sustained, and words are given audible form. The voice is produced by the larynx, a structure of cartilage and muscle in the throat that houses the vocal cords, which vibrate when air from the lungs passes through them. The quality of the voice, its pitch, its resonance, its volume, its clarity, is determined by the tension of the vocal cords, the shape of the throat and mouth, and the amount of air flowing through. The voice can be trained, strengthened, and refined in the same way that the hands can be trained. And the voice can also be damaged, strained, and worn out if it is used incorrectly or excessively. Pitch and resonance. Pitch is the frequency of the sound the voice produces, high or low, determined by how tightly the vocal cords are stretched. Resonance is the richness of that sound, the presence of overtones and harmonics that give the voice depth and body, produced by the shape of the throat, the mouth, and the nasal cavities. A voice with good resonance sounds full, warm, and present. A voice with poor resonance sounds thin, nasal, or strained. The practitioner can improve their voice's resonance by relaxing the throat, opening the mouth wider, and allowing the sound to vibrate in the chest and the sinuses rather than forcing it through a constricted passage. Humming is an excellent training tool. The practitioner hums at a comfortable pitch, feeling the vibration in the chest and the face, and gradually opens the mouth to turn the hum into a sustained vowel sound, maintaining the same feeling of resonance throughout. Volume and projection. Volume is not the same as shouting. Shouting is the result of forcing a large amount of air through a tightened throat, and it produces a harsh, strained sound that fatigues the voice quickly. Volume, the ability to be heard clearly at a distance without strain, comes from breath support and resonance. The practitioner who wants to project their voice should breathe deeply, support the sound with the diaphragm, and allow the resonance to carry the sound outward rather than pushing it. The test of good projection is this. The practitioner should be able to speak or sing at a volume that fills the working space without feeling tension in the throat or losing their voice after 10 minutes. If the throat hurts, the technique is wrong. When to speak, when to whisper, when to remain silent. Not all workings require the voice. The decision to speak, to whisper, or to remain silent is determined by the working's purpose and by the tradition's requirements. Spoken invocations, words delivered at full volume, with clear articulation, are used when the practitioner needs to command attention, to assert their intent, to make the working audible to others in the space, or to their own ears as a form of reinforcement. Whispered invocations are used when the practitioner wants the words to be present but not dominant, a background, a thread of intent woven into the working without overwhelming the silence. And silent workings performed without any vocalization at all, are used when the practitioner wants the focus to remain entirely internal, or when sound would be a distraction, or when the tradition calls for silence as a form of discipline. Vocal fatigue. The practitioner who performs extended vocal workings, chanting, singing, sustained tones for 10 minutes or more, will experience vocal fatigue. The throat becomes dry. The voice becomes hoarse. The pitch becomes unstable. This is not a sign of weakness. It is the result of the vocal cords being used continuously, and it is the same fatigue that a singer experiences after a long performance. The practitioner should hydrate before and during vocal workings, should take breaks to rest the voice, and should avoid pushing through hoarseness to the point where the voice cracks or fails entirely. A voice that is overused will take days to recover, and repeated overuse can cause permanent damage to the vocal cords, nodes, polyps, or scarring that affect the voice's quality for the rest of the practitioner's life. Section the 5th. Conditioning and endurance. The practitioner's physical fitness and its role in the practice. The practice is physical. This statement should not require defense, but it does, because many apprentices arrive at the work with the assumption that ritual is a mental discipline, a matter of knowledge, of symbols, of intent, and that the body is merely the vehicle that carries the mind into the working space. This is wrong. The body is not a vehicle. It is the practitioner. And the practitioner whose body is weak, inflexible, or unconditioned will find their capacity to work limited not by their knowledge or their will, but by the simple fact that they cannot hold the posture, cannot maintain the breath, cannot stand for the duration of the working without pain or exhaustion. Physical conditioning is not optional. It is foundational. Core strength. Core strength, the strength of the muscles of the abdomen, the lower back, and the pelvis, is essential for maintaining upright posture, for holding the staff or the sword steady, and for preventing injury during movements that involve rotation or lifting. A weak core allows the spine to collapse into poor alignment, which produces strain in the back and the neck. A strong core supports the spine, keeps the body stable, and allows the practitioner to move with control and precision. The practitioner should train the core regularly, planks, dead bugs, bird dogs, and other exercises that require the core muscles to stabilize the spine against movement or resistance. These exercises are not exciting. They are not mystical. They are mechanical conditioning, and they work. Cardiovascular endurance. Cardiovascular endurance, the ability of the heart and lungs to sustain activity over time, matters for workings that involve extended movement, such as walking the circle repeatedly, dancing, or performing outdoor workings that require the practitioner to move across terrain. The practitioner whose cardiovascular system is unconditioned will tire quickly, will breath heavily, and will find it difficult to maintain focus because the body is struggling to deliver oxygen to the muscles and the brain. The practitioner with good cardiovascular endurance can sustain movement for extended periods without distress, and can return to a calm, steady state quickly after exertion. Cardiovascular conditioning is built through regular aerobic activity, walking, running, cycling, swimming, or any other activity that raises the heart rate and sustains it for 20 minutes or more. Flexibility. Flexibility, the range of motion in the joints and the elasticity of the muscles and connective tissue, is essential for seated meditation, for kneeling postures, and for any working that requires the body to move into positions that are not part of ordinary daily life. The practitioner whose hamstrings are tight cannot sit cross-legged with an upright spine. The practitioner whose shoulders are stiff cannot raise their arms overhead without strain. The practitioner whose hips are inflexible cannot kneel comfortably. Flexibility is trained through stretching, static stretches held for 30 seconds or more, performed regularly, ideally daily. The practitioner should stretch the major muscle groups, the hamstrings, the hip flexors, the quadriceps, the shoulders, the chest, the back. This is not a 5-minute routine. It is a 15 to 20-minute routine, performed with attention and without forcing the body beyond its current limits. The ache that signals growth versus the pain that signals injury. The practitioner who is conditioning their body will experience discomfort. This is unavoidable. Muscles that are being strengthened ache. Joints that are being stretched feel tight. This ache is the body's signal that it is adapting, that the tissues are being stressed in a way that will, with rest and recovery, make them stronger and more capable. But there is a distinction between the ache of adaptation and the pain of injury, and the practitioner must learn to recognize it. The ache of adaptation is diffuse, dull, and symmetrical. Both legs ache after a long walk, both shoulders ache after holding the arms overhead. The pain of injury is sharp, localized, and asymmetrical. One knee hurts, one wrist hurts, and the pain does not diminish with rest. The practitioner who feels sharp, localized pain should stop the activity immediately, rest, and seek medical attention if the pain persists. The practitioner who pushes through injury produces chronic damage that will limit their capacity for years. Section the 6th. Vision. Dark adaptation, candlelight, peripheral vision, and the scrying trance. Vision is the practitioner's primary sense during most workings. The eyes see the altar, the tools, the candle flames, the circle's boundary. The eyes provide the feedback that tells the practitioner where the wand is pointing, whether the sigil has been drawn correctly, whether the other participants in the working are in position. But vision is not simply a passive reception of light. It is an active process, and the quality of vision, its acuity, its sensitivity to low light, its ability to distinguish detail or to perceive movement in the periphery, can be trained, protected, and deliberately altered to serve the needs of the working. Dark adaptation. The human eye adapts to darkness over time. In bright light, the pupil constricts and the retina uses primarily the cone cells, which are sensitive to color and detail, but require substantial light to function. In darkness, the pupil dilates and the retina shifts to using the rod cells, which are more sensitive to low light, but do not perceive color. This adaptation takes time, roughly 20 to 30 minutes for full dark adaptation to occur. The practitioner who enters a dark working space directly from bright light would be functionally blind for the first several minutes. The practitioner who allows their eyes to adapt, by dimming the light gradually, by spending time in low light before the working begins, by avoiding bright screens or flames until the adaptation is complete, will be able to see far more in the darkness than the unadapted practitioner can. Candlelight versus moonlight versus darkness. Candlelight, moonlight, and total darkness each produce a different quality of vision, and each is suited to different kinds of working. Candlelight is warm, directional, and uneven, it casts strong shadows, it flickers, and it creates a visual environment that is intimate and focused. The practitioner working by candlelight sees the altar and the immediate space clearly, but the edges of the room fade into darkness. Moonlight is cooler, more diffuse, and more even. It does not cast the sharp shadows that candlelight does, and it allows the practitioner to see more of the working space at once, though with less detail. Total darkness, the absence of all light sources, forces the practitioner to rely on other senses, touch, hearing, kinesthesia, and to work entirely from memory and from the internal map of the space. Each of these lighting conditions trains the practitioner in a different way, and the practitioner who works only in one condition is limiting their range. Peripheral vision versus focused gaze. The eye's field of vision is divided into two regions. The fovea, the small central area where vision is sharpest and most detailed, and the periphery, the wide surrounding area where vision is less detailed but more sensitive to movement. The practitioner who looks directly at an object is using foveal vision. They see the object clearly, in detail, but they are not seeing what is happening around it. The practitioner who softens their gaze and allows their attention to spread across the peripheral field is using peripheral vision. They see less detail, but they see more of the whole, and they're more likely to notice movement, changes in light, or the presence of something entering the field from the side. Peripheral vision is the vision of awareness, of watchfulness, of the practitioner who is not focused on a single point, but is attending to the entire space. It is trained by deliberately softening the gaze, by looking at a point on the wall or the altar and noticing, without moving the eyes, what is visible to the left and the right and above and below. The scrying trance. The scrying trance, the state in which the practitioner gazes into a reflective surface, a mirror, a bowl of water, a crystal, and perceives images or patterns, is not a supernatural event. It is a predictable result of sustained and focused gazing. When the eyes are held still and the focus is soft, the visual system begins to produce micro-movements, after images, and subtle distortions that the mind interprets as shapes, faces, or symbols. These are not external visions. They are the visual cortex's own activity, projected onto the field of view in the absence of strong external input. The practitioner who understands this can use the scrying trance deliberately, not to see the future, but to access the mind's own associative processes, its pattern recognition, its tendency to find meaning in ambiguity. The scrying trance is a mirror for the unconscious, and what the practitioner sees in it is their own mind, seen from an angle they cannot otherwise achieve. Section the 7th. Hearing. Auditory sensitivity, overtones, silence, and tinnitus as signal. Hearing is the practitioner's sense of sound, the perception of vibrations in the air, detected by the ear and translated into electrical signals by the auditory nerve. The practitioner hears the bell, the invocation, the rustle of the robe, the crackle of the candle flame, and the ambient sounds of the working space. But hearing is not merely passive reception. The practitioner can train their auditory sensitivity, can learn to distinguish subtle differences in tone and pitch, can develop the ability to hear their own pulse and breath as internal sounds, and can use silence, the absence of sound, as a tool for focusing attention. Auditory sensitivity. The human ear is capable of detecting a wide range of frequencies, from the deep bass tones below 100 Hz to the high frequencies above 10,000 Hz. But most people, most of the time, do not attend to the full range of what they can hear. The practitioner who trains their auditory sensitivity learns to notice sounds that would otherwise go unheard, the faint overtones in a bell's ring, the slight rasp in their own voice, the subtle change in the quality of the silence when another person enters the room. This sensitivity is trained through deliberate listening, sitting in a quiet space, closing the eyes, and attending to every sound that is present, no matter how faint. The hum of the refrigerator, the ticking of a clock, the sound of one's own breath. The practitioner who practices this regularly will find that their hearing becomes sharper, more discriminating, and more useful as a source of information during workings. Distinguishing overtones. When a bell is struck, it does not produce a single pure tone. It produces a fundamental frequency, the lowest, loudest tone, and a series of overtones, which are higher frequencies that resonate at integer multiples of the fundamental. The practitioner who listens carefully can hear these overtones as a shimmering, complex quality in the bell's sound. The ability to distinguish overtones is useful not only for working with bells and singing bowls but also for voice work. The practitioner's own voice produces overtones, and learning to hear and control them is part of developing resonance and projection. The training is simple: strike a bell, listen to the sound as it fades, and try to isolate the individual tones that make up the whole. At first, the practitioner will hear only a single sound. With practice, the individual overtones will begin to separate, and the sound will become, perceptually, richer and more structured. The silence after the bell stops ringing. The bell is struck. It rings. The sound fades. And then there is silence. But that silence is not empty. It is full of the absence that the bell's sound created, full of the ear's adjustment back to the ambient background, full of the practitioner's own internal sounds, the pulse, the breath, the faint ringing in the ears that become audible again once the bell sound is past. The silence after the bell is a moment of transition, of reset, of the auditory system recalibrating itself, and the practitioner who attends to that silence, who does not immediately move on to the next action but pauses and listens to the quality of the quiet, is using the bell not merely as a sound, but as a punctuation mark that divides the working into distinct phases. Tinnitus as residual charge. Tinnitus, the perception of ringing, buzzing, or hissing in the ears in the absence of external sound, is common among practitioners who work with sustained tones, bells, or other loud sounds. It is also common after intense workings, even in the absence of loud sound, and in these cases it may be interpreted as a form of residual charge in the auditory nerve, the nervous system's continued activity after the working has ended. Mild, temporary tinnitus is not cause for concern. It fades within minutes to hours. Persistent tinnitus, ringing that does not fade, that is present constantly or that worsens over time, is a sign of damage to the auditory system, typically from prolonged exposure to loud sounds, and it is not reversible. The practitioner who experiences persistent tinnitus should protect their hearing by reducing their exposure to loud sounds and by using ear protection when necessary. Section the 8th. Touch and proprioception. Temperature, texture, and the sense of the body and space. Touch is the practitioner's sense of contact, the perception of pressure, temperature, texture, and vibration through the skin and the underlying tissues. Proprioception is the sense of the body's position in space, the awareness of where the limbs are, how they are oriented, and whether they are moving or still. Together, these two senses allow the practitioner to hold the wand without looking at it, to feel the heat of the candle from across the room, to know when they have reached the edge of the circle, and to detect subtle changes in the working space through the skin's sensitivity to temperature and air movement. Temperature sensitivity in the palms. The palms of the hands are exceptionally sensitive to temperature. The practitioner who holds a wand that has been lying on the altar will feel, within seconds, whether the wood is warmer or cooler than their own skin. The practitioner who holds their hands near a candle flame will feel the heat radiating outward, and will be able to judge, without looking, how close they are to the flame by the intensity of that heat. This sensitivity is functional. It allows the practitioner to detect the wand's coupling, the faint warmth that indicates the wood is beginning to transmit, and to avoid burns or discomfort from heat sources in the working space. The practitioner can enhance this sensitivity by paying deliberate attention to temperature during ordinary activities, holding a warm cup, running water over the hands, noticing the difference between the temperature of metal and the temperature of wood. The texture of wood grain as information. The surface of a wooden wand or staff is not smooth. It has texture, the grain, the slight ridges where growth rings were more pronounced, the occasional knot or imperfection. The practitioner who learns to read this texture, who can feel, through the palm and the fingers, the orientation of the grain, the presence of a knot, the transition from one section of the wood to another, has a tactile map of the instrument that is independent of vision. This is useful in dark workings, where the practitioner cannot see the wand clearly, and it is useful in detecting changes in the wand's condition, a splinter forming, a crack beginning to open, a section of the wood that has become rougher or smoother with use. The texture is information, and the practitioner who attends to it is listening to the wand with their hands. Proprioception and the wand's orientation. Proprioception allows the practitioner to know, without looking, where the wand's tip is pointing, whether the wand is level or tilted, and how far the arm is extended. This sense is built on feedback from the muscles, the tendons, and the joints, sensors that detect stretch, tension, and position and send that information to the brain. The practitioner who has developed strong proprioception can perform complex wand movements with their eyes closed, can walk a circle in total darkness without veering off course, and can maintain a specific posture for extended periods without needing to check their alignment in a mirror. Proprioception is trained through practice, through repetition of movements until they become automatic, and through exercises that challenge the sense deliberately, such as standing on one leg with the eyes closed or tracing shapes in the air with the wand while looking away. Callus versus sensitivity. Callus formation, as discussed in the section on the hands, reduces the skin's sensitivity in the areas where it develops. This is a trade-off. The practitioner with heavily calloused hands can grip the wand without discomfort or pain, but they will feel less of the wood's texture, less of its temperature, less of the subtle vibrations that a more sensitive hand would detect. The practitioner with uncalloused, sensitive hands will feel everything, every ridge, every warmth, every faint tremor, but they will also feel pain more acutely, and they will be more prone to blisters and abrasions. There is no ideal state. There is only the practitioner's choice about which they value more, and the acceptance that the choice has consequences in both directions. Section the 9th. Smell. Olfactory training, scent memory, and the direct path to the limbic system. Smell is the practitioner's sense of airborne chemicals, volatile organic compounds that enter the nose and are detected by the olfactory receptors, which send signals directly to the olfactory bulb in the brain. This pathway is unique among the senses. It bypasses the thalamus, which processes most sensory information, and connects directly to the limbic system, which governs emotion, memory, and autonomic responses. This means that smell has a more immediate and more visual effect on the practitioner's internal state than any other sense. The scent of frankincense does not merely register as frankincense. It triggers, within milliseconds, a constellation of associations, memories, and emotional responses that the conscious mind may not even be aware of. Olfactory training. Most people do not attend to smell with the same care that they attend to vision or hearing. The practitioner who trains their olfactory sensitivity learns to distinguish between similar scents, to detect faint scents that would otherwise go unnoticed, and to identify specific compounds by smell alone. This training is simple. The practitioner selects a set of substances with distinct scents, essential oils, herbs, resins, spices, smells each one deliberately, and practices naming it without looking. Over time, the practitioner's ability to discriminate between scents improves, and scents that once seemed similar, sandalwood and cedar wood, for instance, become clearly distinct. This sensitivity is useful in selecting incense, in blending oils, and in detecting changes in the working space. A faint smell of smoke, a trace of ozone, the scent of rain entering through a window. Scent memory and its involuntary triggering. Scent memory is one of the most powerful and most involuntary forms of memory available to the human brain. A scent encountered in childhood, the smell of a particular incense, a specific flower, the smokes of a wood fire, will, when encountered decades later, trigger a vivid and often emotional recollection of the context in which it was first experienced. This is not metaphor. It is the structure of the olfactory system and its direct connection to the hippocampus, which is the brain's memory formation center. The practitioner can use this deliberately. By associating a specific scent with a specific working, the practitioner creates a sensory anchor that will, in future workings, immediately recall the mental and emotional state of the original. But the practitioner must also be aware that scent memory is involuntary. A scent that carries an unwanted association, a memory of fear, of grief, of discomfort, will trigger that association every time it is encountered, and no amount of conscious effort will prevent it. The smell of ozone. Ozone, triatomic oxygen, O3, has a sharp, acrid, faintly metallic smell that is sometimes detected in the working space after intense electrical activity, after thunderstorms, or, in some practitioners' experience, after workings that involve sustained high-intensity projection. The smell is real. Ozone is produced whenever electrical discharges occur in air, and while the amounts produced in a ritual working are far too small to be measured by ordinary equipment, the human nose is sensitive enough to detect ozone at concentrations as low as a few parts per billion. The practitioner who smells ozone during or after a working may interpret it as confirmation that electrical activity was present, that the wand was transmitting, that the nervous system was highly active, that something happened. This interpretation is not unreasonable, but it is also not definitive. The smell could also be from a nearby storm, from electronic equipment, or from any other source of electrical discharge in the environment. Section the 10th. Kinesthesia. The sense of the body in space, balance, orientation, and the felt map. Kinesthesia is the sense of movement and position, the awareness of where the body is in space, how it is oriented, and whether it is moving or still. This sense is built on input from the vestibular system, the organs in the inner ear that detect gravity and acceleration, the proprioceptors, sensors in the muscles and joints that detect stretch and position, and the visual system, which provides external reference points. Together, these inputs create a felt map of the body's relationship to the environment, and that map is essential for maintaining balance, for navigating the working space, and for performing movements with precision and control. Balance. Balance is the ability to maintain the body's center of gravity over its base of support. In standing postures, the base of support is the area between the feet. In seated or kneeling postures, the base is larger and includes the contact points of the knees, the hips, or the buttocks. The practitioner with good balance can stand on one leg, can walk along a narrow line, can hold a posture without wobbling or swaying. Balance is trained through exercises that challenge the vestibular system and the proprioceptors, standing on one leg, walking heel to toe, closing the eyes and maintaining a posture without visual reference. The practitioner who trains their balance will find that they can hold postures more steadily, can move through the working space with more confidence, and can recover from small perturbations, a stumble, a shift in weight, without falling or losing their composure. Walking a circle with eyes closed. The ability to walk a circle with the eyes closed, to move along a curved path in total darkness, without visual reference, and to return to the starting point with reasonable accuracy, is a demonstration of kinesthetic skill. The practitioner who can do this has internalized the circle's geometry, has developed a strong sense of their own movement through space, and has learned to trust their body signals over their eyes' absence of input. This skill is trained through practice. The practitioner walks the circle with eyes open, noting the felt sense of the curve, the number of steps required, the points at which the direction changes. Then they close their eyes and walk the circle again, relying entirely on kinesthesia. At first, the path will be erratic. With practice, it becomes smooth, consistent, and accurate. The felt sense of here is the altar. The practitioner who works in the same space repeatedly develops a kinesthetic map of that space, a felt sense of where the altar is, where the candles are, where the edges of the room are, even when they are not looking. This map is not visual. It is constructed from repeated movement through the space, from the body's memory of how many steps it takes to reach the altar from the door, from the proprioceptive sense of turning to face the altar, from the accumulated experience of thousands of small spatial relationships. The practitioner with a strong kinesthetic map can move through the working space in darkness or with their eyes closed, can reach for a tool on the altar without fumbling, and can orient themselves immediately upon entering the space, because the body knows where it is and where everything else is in relation to it. Section the 11th. Attention. Sustained focus, divided attention, and the skill of noticing drift. Attention is the practitioner's most fundamental mental capacity. It is the act of selecting, from the vast field of sensory input and internal thought, a specific object or process and holding it in conscious awareness. The working requires attention. The wand requires attention. The invocation requires attention. And the practitioner, whose attention is weak, easily distracted, or unable to sustain focus for more than a few seconds will find that their workings are scattered, incomplete, and ineffective, not because their knowledge or their tools are inadequate, but because the mind itself is not present for the duration of the work. Sustained focus. Sustained focus is the ability to hold attention on a single object, a candle flame, a word, a sensation in the body, for an extended period without the mind wandering. This is not a natural state for most people. The default mode of the human mind is to wander, to jump from thought to thought, from sensation to sensation, from memory to plan to observation, in a rapid and largely unconscious stream. Sustained focus is the deliberate interruption of that stream, the act of saying to the mind, here, now, this, and nothing else. The training of sustained focus is simple in description and difficult in execution. The practitioner selects an object of focus, the breath is traditional, but any object will do, directs their attention to it, and holds it there. When the mind wanders, and it will wander, within seconds, the practitioner notices the wandering and gently returns the attention to the object. This is not a failure. The wandering is inevitable. The skill is in the noticing and the returning. Divided attention. Divided attention is the ability to attend to multiple objects or processes simultaneously, to hold the wand, to speak an invocation, to walk the circle, and to maintain awareness of the candle flames and the other participants, all at once. This is not the same as multitasking, which is the rapid switching of attention between tasks. Divided attention is the genuine simultaneous awareness of multiple streams of input, and it is possible only when at least some of the tasks involved have become automatic, when they no longer require conscious effort. The practitioner who is learning to walk the circle must attend fully to the movement, to the placement of the feet, to the shape of the path. The practitioner who has walked the circle 1,000 times can walk it automatically, and their attention is free to attend to the invocation, to the wand, to the quality of the space. Divided attention is trained through repetition, through the gradual automation of tasks that initially required full focus, and through the deliberate practice of attending to multiple things at once in low-stakes contexts before attempting it in a working. The inevitable drift and the skill of noticing it. Attention will drift. This is not a personal failing. It is a property of the nervous system. The mind is designed to scan the environment, to notice changes, to respond to novel stimuli. Sustained focus on a single object is, in evolutionary terms, a recent and somewhat unnatural demand. The practitioner who expects their attention to remain perfectly focused for the duration of a working is setting themselves up for frustration. The skill is not in preventing the drift, that is impossible. The skill is in noticing the drift quickly, without judgment, and returning the attention to its object. The practitioner who notices the drift within a second or two and returns has lost almost nothing. The practitioner who does not notice for a minute or 5 minutes has lost the thread of the working and must spend time and effort rebuilding the focus that was lost. Section 12. Visualization. The construction of mental images, precision, vagueness, and aphantasia. Visualization is the act of forming a mental image, of seeing, in the mind's eye, an object, a scene, a symbol, or a process that is not physically present. Many traditions make extensive use of visualization. The practitioner is instructed to imagine a circle of light, to visualize energy flowing through the body, to hold the image of a specific symbol in the mind during the working. For some practitioners, this comes naturally. For others, it is difficult or impossible. And the practitioner who struggles with visualization should know, before they conclude that they are incapable of the practice, that the range of human visualization ability is vast, and that the inability to visualize clearly is not a barrier to effective working, it simply requires different techniques. Precision versus vagueness. When the practitioner is asked to visualize a red triangle, what do they actually see? Some practitioners will see, in the mind's eye, a sharp, vivid, fully formed triangle with clear edges, a specific shade of red, and a definite size and orientation. Others will see a vague, indistinct impression of redness and triangularity, without clear edges or stable form. Neither of these is wrong. They are simply different levels of visualization precision, and both can be trained. The practitioner who wants to improve their visualization precision should practice with simple objects, a single color, a simple geometric shape, a familiar object like an apple or a candle. They should close their eyes, form the image, and try to hold it steady, noticing when it fades, when it shifts, when it becomes unclear, and gently bringing it back into focus. Over time, the images will become more stable, more detailed, and more under the practitioner's control. Aphantasia and workarounds. Aphantasia is the inability to form mental images, the complete absence of visual imagery in the mind's eye. For practitioners with aphantasia, instructions to visualize are not merely difficult, they're meaningless. The practitioner with aphantasia does not see a vague image. They see nothing at all. This does not mean they cannot perform workings that traditionally rely on visualization. It means they must use different techniques. Instead of visualizing energy flowing through the body, they can focus on the felt sense of warmth, pressure, or tingling. Instead of visualizing a circle of light, they can focus on the concept of the circle, on the memory of walking it, on the intention of its presence. Instead of holding the image of a symbol, they can speak the symbol's name, trace it with a finger, or focus on its meaning. The practice is adaptable. The practitioner with aphantasia should not be told they cannot work. They should be given techniques that do not rely on visual imagery. Section the 13th. Memory. Procedural memory, declarative memory, and the Grimoire's external record. Memory is the practitioner's capacity to store and retrieve information, to remember procedures, words, correspondences, and experiences. The practice relies heavily on memory. The practitioner must remember how to hold the wand, how to walk the circle, which words to speak, which verbs correspond to which intentions, and what happened in previous workings. But memory is not a single function. It is a collection of systems, each with its own characteristics, its own strengths, and its own vulnerabilities. The practitioner who understands the structure of memory can use it more effectively and can compensate for its weaknesses. Procedural memory. Procedural memory is the memory of how to do things, how to tie a knot, how to ride a bicycle, how to hold the wand and move it through the air in a specific pattern. This type of memory is encoded in the motor system, in the cerebellum and the basal ganglia, and it is remarkably durable. Once a procedure has been learned through repetition, it persists for years or decades with little to no conscious rehearsal. The practitioner who has walked the circle 1,000 times does not need to think about how to walk it. The body remembers. The feet know where to go. The hand knows how to hold the atom. This is the power of procedural memory, and it is the reason that physical practice, actual repetition of the movements, with the actual tools, is far more effective than mental rehearsal or reading about the movements in a text. Declarative memory. Declarative memory is the memory of facts, of words, of correspondences, the kind of information that can be stated explicitly. This type of memory is encoded in the hippocampus and the cortex, and it is far more fragile than procedural memory. The practitioner who memorizes an invocation may find, weeks or months later, that they have forgotten the exact words, that phrases have become jumbled, or that entire lines have vanished. This is normal. Declarative memory fades without rehearsal, and the practitioner who wants to retain specific information, invocations, correspondences, sigils, must rehearse it regularly, must use it in workings, and must write it down in the Grimoire as an external backup. The Grimoire's external memory. The Grimoire, as discussed in Codex 8, is the practitioner's book of workings, the written record of procedures, sigils, and knowledge. But it is also, functionally, an extension of the practitioner's own memory. The practitioner who writes down an invocation in the Grimoire does not need to memorize it perfectly. They can consult the Grimoire before the working, refresh their memory, and proceed with confidence. The practitioner who records correspondences, procedures, and results in the Grimoire is offloading the burden of remembering from their own biological memory to the external, permanent record of the book. This is not laziness. It is practical. The Grimoire does not forget. It does not confuse details. It does not rewrite itself with each recall, the way human memory does. It is a reliable archive, and the practitioner who uses it as such is working smarter, not harder. Section the 14th. Intent formation. The mental act that precedes every working. Intent is the shaped will, the specific, directed, conscious decision about what the working is meant to accomplish. Intent is not the same as desire. Desire is vague, diffuse, often conflicted. Intent is clear, singular, and committed. The practitioner who enters a working with a desire for success or protection or insight has not formed intent. They have formed a wish. The practitioner who enters a working with the intent to complete this specific task by this specific date, or to establish a boundary that prevents this specific intrusion, or to gain clarity on this specific question, has formed intent, and the working that follows will be correspondingly precise. Clarity and singularity. Intent must be clear. The practitioner must be able to state, in a single sentence, what the working is for. If the practitioner cannot do this, if the explanation requires multiple sentences, or if different parts of the explanation contradict each other, the intent is not yet formed. It is still in the process of formation, and the working should not proceed until the clarity is achieved. Intent must also be singular. A working cannot have two intents, any more than a wand can point in two directions at once. The practitioner who wants both protection and prosperity from a single working has not formed one intent. They have formed two, and they are in conflict. The practitioner must choose which intent is primary, perform that working, and then, separately, perform the working for the other intent. The difference between I want and I will. I want is a statement of desire. I will is a statement of intent. The difference is commitment. I want to complete this task leaves room for doubt, for negotiation, for the possibility of not completing it. I will complete this task is a declaration, a commitment made by the practitioner to themselves, witnessed by their own nervous system, and reinforced by the act of speaking it aloud or writing it down. The practitioner who forms intent using the language of I will is training themselves to take responsibility for the working's outcome, to commit fully to the action, and to eliminate the internal hedging that weakens so many workings before they even begin. Internal calibration of certainty. The practitioner who has formed a clear, singular, committed intent will feel a quality of settledness, of rightness, of the decision having been made completely. The practitioner who has not yet formed intent will feel uncertainty, hesitation, a sense that something is missing, or that the decision could still go either way. This felt sense is the practitioner's internal calibration, the nervous system's own signal about whether the intent is ready. The practitioner should trust this signal. If the intent feels uncertain, the working should wait. If the intent feels solid, the working can proceed. Section the 15th. The trance states. Light trance, deep trance, and the physiology of altered states. Trance is a state of focused attention and reduced peripheral awareness, a narrowing of consciousness that allows the practitioner to attend more deeply to a specific object, process, or internal experience. Trance is not sleep. It is not unconsciousness. It is a specific configuration of the nervous system, measurable in brainwave patterns, in muscle tension, and in autonomic activity, and it can be entered deliberately, maintained for a specific duration, and exited safely. The practitioner who learns to work with trance states has access to a range of mental experiences that are not available in ordinary waking consciousness, and those experiences can be useful for scrying, for deep meditation, for accessing unconscious material, and for performing workings that require sustained and broken focus. Light trance. Light trance is the state the practitioner enters when they sit down to meditate, when they gaze into the candle flame, when they begin to focus on the breath and the chatter of ordinary thought begins to quiet. In light trance, the practitioner is still aware of their surroundings, can still hear sounds in the room, can still respond to external stimuli if necessary. But the awareness is softer, less reactive, less scattered. The brainwave pattern shifts from beta, ordinary waking consciousness, 13-30 Hz, to alpha, relaxed focus, 8-12 Hz. The body's muscle tension decreases. The breath slows. Light trance is the gateway state, the threshold between ordinary consciousness and the deeper states that lie beyond it. The practitioner can maintain light trance for extended periods, 30 minutes, an hour, longer, without difficulty, and can exit it simply by opening their eyes and returning their attention to the external world. Deep trance. Deep trance is the state in which the practitioner's awareness of the external environment fades almost completely, and the focus narrows to a single internal object or process. In deep trance, the practitioner may not hear sounds in the room, may lose track of time, may experience the body as distant or absent. The brainwave pattern shifts to theta, deep meditation, 4-7 Hz, or, in very deep states, delta, deep sleep, 0.5-3 Hz, though the practitioner remains conscious. Deep trance is not a comfortable state for most people. It is disorienting. It can produce unusual sensations, floating, sinking, distortions of body image, and it requires practice and confidence to enter and to exit without panic. The practitioner should not attempt deep trance alone, or without preparation, or in circumstances where they cannot afford to lose track of time or surroundings. The trance of rhythmic motion. Rhythmic motion, walking, drumming, dancing, chanting, produces a trance state of its own, distinct from the stillness-based trances described above. The repetition of movement synchronizes the motor system, and trains the breath, and produces a quality of focus that is active rather than passive. The practitioner who walks the circle repeatedly, who drums for 20 minutes without stopping, who dances until the body moves automatically, enters a state in which the conscious mind steps back and the body takes over. This is not dissociation. It is flow, the state in which action and awareness merge, in which the practitioner is fully present in the movement, and fully absent from the commentary, the self-consciousness, the internal chatter that ordinarily accompanies action. The trance of rhythmic motion is powerful, sustainable, and safe, and it is the trance state most accessible to practitioners who find stillness difficult. Physiological markers of trance depth. The practitioner can gauge the depth of their trance state by attending to the body's signals. Shallow trance, breath slows, muscles relax, thoughts quiet but external awareness remains. Medium trance, breath is very slow and regular, body feels heavy or distant, external sounds are muffled or irrelevant. Deep trance, breath is barely perceptible, body awareness fades, time sense is lost, and the practitioner may experience vivid internal imagery, auditory phenomena, or a sense of profound stillness. If the practitioner wants to go deeper, they slow the breath further, relax more completely, and allow the attention to narrow. If they want to come out, they speed the breath, move the body, open the eyes, and direct attention outward. Section the 16th. Depletion and recovery. Recognizing burnout, rest, nutrition, and the body's need for restoration. The practice is demanding. It requires sustained focus, physical endurance, emotional commitment, and energetic output. The practitioner who works intensively, who performs multiple workings in a week, who pushes through fatigue, who does not rest between demanding sessions, will, over time, experience depletion. This is not a moral failing. It is physiology. The body and the nervous system have finite resources, and those resources must be replenished. The practitioner who does not recognize depletion, who does not rest and recover deliberately, will find their capacity diminishing, not temporarily, but cumulatively, until the depletion becomes chronic and the practitioner is unable to work effectively at all. Recognizing depletion. The symptoms of depletion are both physical and mental. Physical symptoms: persistent fatigue that is not relieved by a single night's sleep, muscle aches that have no clear cause, headaches, digestive disturbances, increased susceptibility to illness. Mental symptoms: difficulty focusing, inability to form clear intent, a sense of flatness or dullness in the mind, irritability, and a loss of motivation to work. The practitioner who experiences these symptoms after a single working is experiencing normal fatigue, which will resolve with rest. The practitioner who experiences them persistently, across weeks or months, is experiencing depletion, and rest alone will not resolve it. Recovery from depletion requires extended rest, weeks, not days, and deliberate attention to nutrition, sleep, and the body's other needs. Rest and sleep. Sleep is the body's primary recovery mechanism. During sleep, the brain consolidates memories, the immune system repairs tissues, and the nervous system recalibrates itself after the day's activity. The practitioner who does not sleep enough, who routinely gets less than 7 hours of sleep per night, is not recovering fully between workings, and the deficit accumulates. The practitioner should prioritize sleep above almost everything else in the practice. A well-rested practitioner with mediocre tools will outperform a sleep-deprived practitioner with perfect tools, because the well-rested practitioner's nervous system is functioning at capacity and the sleep-deprived practitioner's is not. Nutrition. The nervous system requires fuel. That fuel is glucose, fatty acids, amino acids, vitamins, and minerals, all obtained from food. The practitioner who does not eat adequately, who skips meals, who restricts calories excessively, who eats a diet that is deficient in key nutrients, is starving the very system that the practice depends on. After a demanding working, the practitioner should eat. Not immediately, necessarily, but within a few hours. The meal should include protein, which provides amino acids for neurotransmitter synthesis and tissue repair, fat, which provides fatty acids for cell membranes and myelin, and carbohydrates, which replenish glucose stores. The practitioner who forgets to eat, who is too absorbed in the work to attend to the body's hunger signals, is making a mistake that will cost them in the long run. Hydration. Dehydration impairs cognitive function, reduces physical performance, and increases the perceived effort of any task. The practitioner who is dehydrated, even mildly dehydrated, at a level that produces no obvious symptoms, will find their focus weaker, their endurance lower, and their recovery slower. The practitioner should drink water before, during, and after workings. Not coffee. Not alcohol. Water. The guideline is simple. If the practitioner is thirsty, they are already dehydrated. They should drink before they feel thirst, and they should drink enough that their urine is pale yellow or clear. Section the 17th. Grounding techniques. Physical grounding, sensory grounding, and re-entry into ordinary life. Grounding is the practitioner's method of returning the nervous system to a baseline state after a working, of discharging excess energy, of re-establishing contact with the ordinary world, and of ensuring that the working's effects do not spill over into the rest of the practitioner's life in unintended ways. Grounding is not mystical. It is practical nervous system hygiene, and the practitioner who neglects it will find themselves carrying the working's charge forward into their day, experiencing symptoms that range from mild agitation to profound disorientation. Physical grounding, the anchor revisited. The anchor, as described in Codex 7, is a technique in which the practitioner drives the wand into the earth and allows excess energy to discharge into the ground. But the practitioner's own body can be grounded in the same way, without the wand. The practitioner stands barefoot on the earth, or on stone, or on any conductive surface, bends the knees slightly, and presses the feet firmly into the ground, feeling the weight of the body sinking downward. The breath slows. The attention moves to the soles of the feet, to the contact between skin and ground, and the practitioner imagines, or simply intends, that any excess charge is flowing down through the legs, through the feet, and into the earth. After a few minutes, the practitioner will feel the release, the tension in the body eases, the racing thoughts slow, and the nervous system settles back into its ordinary state. Sensory grounding. Sensory grounding is the deliberate engagement of the senses with ordinary, mundane stimuli as a way of pulling the practitioner's attention out of the working and back into the ordinary world. The practitioner eats something, not ritual food, but ordinary food with a strong, distinct flavor, an apple, a piece of bread, something salty or sour. The act of tasting, chewing, and swallowing is grounding because it is immediate, physical, and entirely present tense. The practitioner can also ground through touch, washing the hands with cold water, holding a stone, pressing the palms against a wall, through sound, listening to ordinary conversation, to traffic, to the sound of water running, or through any other sensory experience that is mundane and present. Social grounding. Conversation with non-practitioners, with people who are not in the working, who do not know about the working, who are engaged in ordinary life, is one of the most effective grounding techniques available. The practitioner who, after a working, spends time talking with friends or family about mundane topics, what they had for dinner, what happened at work, what the weather is doing, is re-entering ordinary social reality, and that re-entry is grounding. The practitioner should not attempt to explain the working, to share its details, or to seek validation from non-practitioners. The conversation should be ordinary, light, and completely disconnected from the practice. The ordinariness is the point. Section the 18th. The fallow period. When to stop working, seasonal rest and the wisdom of inactivity. The practitioner who works continuously, who never takes breaks, who performs workings week after week without pause, who treats the practice as an obligation rather than as a discipline that requires rest, is making a fundamental error. The body and the mind are not machines. They are biological systems, and biological systems require periods of inactivity in order to consolidate learning, to repair damage, and to restore capacity. The fallow period is the practitioner's deliberate rest, the weeks or months during which no workings are performed, during which the tools are set aside, during which the practitioner engages with ordinary life and allows the practice to settle into the background. And to stop. The practitioner should stop working when the body or the mind signals that it is time. The signals are the same as the symptoms of depletion, persistent fatigue, difficulty focusing, loss of motivation, a sense that the workings are effortful rather than flowing. The practitioner who ignores these signals and pushes through will not produce better workings. They will produce worse ones, and they will accumulate damage that takes far longer to heal than the time they would have spent resting. The practitioner should also stop working if the practice has become joyless, if the workings feel like a chore, if there is no sense of curiosity or discovery, if the practitioner is going through the motions without engagement. The practice should not be drudgery. If it has become drudgery, the practitioner should stop, rest, and return only when the desire to work has returned naturally. Seasonal rest. Many traditions build rest into the calendar, periods of the year during which workings are deliberately minimized or stopped entirely. The winter solstice to the spring equinox, for instance, is a period of dormancy in the natural world, and some practitioners mirror that dormancy in their own practice, performing only essential workings and otherwise allowing themselves to rest. This is not laziness. It is alignment with the larger rhythms of the year, and it produces a quality of renewal in the spring that the practitioner who worked straight through the winter does not experience. The practitioner should experiment with seasonal rest, with taking a month or two off from the practice entirely, and should observe what happens to their capacity, their focus, and their enthusiasm when they return. Section the 19th. The developmental arc. Novice, journeyman, adept, and the elder practitioner. The practitioner's capacity is not fixed. It changes over the arcs of years and decades, shaped by practice, by aging, by injury and recovery, by the accumulation of experience and the gradual automation of skills that were once effortful. The novice, the journeyman, the adept, and the elder practitioner are not merely at different levels of knowledge. They are operating with fundamentally different nervous systems, different bodies, and different relationships to the practice itself. Understanding this arc helps the practitioners set realistic expectations, avoid frustration, and recognize that the plateau is not a failure, but a necessary stage in the development of mastery. The novice. The novice, the practitioner in their first year, is learning everything for the first time. The hands do not yet know how to hold the wand. The feet do not yet know how to walk the circle. The breath does not yet learn to slow and deepen automatically. Every working is effortful, because every element of the working requires conscious attention. The novice should not expect their workings to be smooth or to produce dramatic results. The novice's task is not to produce results. It is to build the foundation, to train the hands, the breath, the posture, the attention. The novice who focuses on results before they have built the foundation will be frustrated, because the results depend on capacities that the novice does not yet possess. The journeyman. The journeyman, the practitioner in years 2 through 10, has automated the basics. The hands hold the wand correctly without thinking. The circle is walked smoothly. The breath is steady. The journeyman's workings begin to flow, to feel less like a series of deliberate actions and more like a single, coherent process. But the journeyman also encounters a plateau, the long, flat period during which progress seems to stall. The workings are competent, but they are not transcendent. The practitioner is skilled, but they are not yet masterful. This is the period during which most practitioners quit, because the plateau is demoralizing. The journeyman must understand that the plateau is not a failure. It is the period during which the nervous system is consolidating gains, during which the subtle refinements are being integrated, and during which the foundation for the next leap is being built invisibly. The adept. The practitioner after a decade or more, has internalized the practice to the point where it has changed the body and the nervous system in measurable ways. The hands are stronger, more sensitive, and more responsive. The posture is automatic. The breath can be slowed or quickened at will without conscious effort. The coupling between nervous system and wand happens faster, more cleanly, more completely. The adept's intuitions are reliable, because they are built on 10,000 hours of experience. The nervous system has learned to recognize patterns that the conscious mind cannot articulate, and it guides the adept toward correct actions before the adept knows why those actions are correct. The adept is not infallible, but the adept's errors are rare, and when they occur, they are recognized and corrected quickly. The elder practitioner. The practitioner in their later decades, must adapt to a body that is changing in ways that reduce certain capacities. The hands may shake. The knees may no longer bend into kneeling postures. The eyes may no longer focus as sharply. The voice may lose range and power. These are not failures. They are the natural consequences of aging, and the elder practitioner who resists them, who tries to maintain the same physical intensity they had in their 30s or 40s, is setting themselves up for injury and frustration. The elder practitioner's task is to adapt, to find new ways of working that honor the body's current capacity rather than demanding that it perform as it did decades ago. The seated working replaces the standing one. The spoken invocation becomes a whispered or silent one. The focus shifts from physical intensity to mental clarity, from force to precision, from doing to being. The elder practitioner has nothing to prove. They have decades of experience. They know what works and what does not. And they can work, if they choose to adapt, for as long as the body and the mind remain functional. Section the 20th. Injury, illness, and adaptation. Repetitive strain, nervous system overload, and working while unwell. The practitioner's body is not invulnerable. It can be injured by overuse, by poor technique, by pushing beyond safe limits. It can become ill, temporarily or chronically, in ways that impair the capacity to work. And the practitioner who does not recognize injury or illness, who does not rest and recover, who tries to work through pain or fever or exhaustion, is not demonstrating dedication. They are demonstrating poor judgment, and they will pay for that judgment in prolonged recovery time, in chronic conditions, and in reduced capacity that may never fully return. Repetitive strain injury, damage to the tendons, muscles, or nerves caused by repeated movements, is the most common injury in the practice. Tendonitis in the wrist from wand work. Shoulder strain from holding the staff overhead. Neck strain from craning forward to see the altar in dim light. These injuries develop slowly, over months or years of repeated stress, and they are easy to ignore in the early stages because the pain is mild and intermittent. But repetitive strain injuries do not heal on their own. They worsen with continued use, and if left untreated, they can become permanent. The practitioner who experiences pain during or after a working, pain that persists for more than a day or two, pain that returns every time the same movement is performed, should stop performing that movement, should rest the affected area, and should seek medical attention. The recovery may take weeks or months, but the alternative, permanent damage, is worse. Nervous system overload. The result of improper throttling, of pushing the wand to full output for too long, of performing workings that demand more energy than the practitioner's nervous system can safely produce, manifests as a constellation of symptoms: tremor in the hands, nausea, dizziness, a persistent ringing in the ears, and a dissociative fog that can last for hours or days. These symptoms are the body's alarm signals, and they indicate that the practitioner has damaged the nervous system's ability to regulate itself. The recovery from nervous system overload requires complete rest, no workings, no wand work, no intense mental activity, for a period that depends on the severity of the overload but is typically measured in weeks, not days. The practitioner who experiences these symptoms repeatedly is working incorrectly, and they must revise their technique, must learn to throttle more carefully, and must accept that their current capacity is lower than they thought it was. Working while ill. The practitioner who is ill, with a fever, with an infection, with any acute illness that produces systemic symptoms, should not work. The immune system and the nervous system share resources, and when the immune system is fighting an infection, those resources are not available for the practice. The practitioner who tries to work while ill will find the working effortful, ineffective, and depleting, and they will prolong their illness by diverting energy away from the immune system's needs. The guideline is simple. If the practitioner has a fever, they should not work. If the practitioner is too ill to perform ordinary daily activities, they should not work. The working can wait. The body's recovery cannot. Section the 21st. Disability and adaptation. The practice is not obliged. It is adaptable. The practice does not require a perfect body. It does not require the ability to stand, to kneel, to see, to hear, to speak, or to move in any specific way. The practice requires intent, attention, and the willingness to engage with the tools and the procedures in whatever way the practitioner's body allows. The practitioner who cannot stand can cast a circle seated. The practitioner who cannot speak can perform invocations through gesture, through breath, through writing. The practitioner who cannot see can work by touch and by sound. The practitioner who cannot hear can work in silence, attending to the vibrations they feel rather than the sounds they cannot hear. The practice is adaptable, and the practitioner who is told that they cannot work because their body does not conform to some imagined standard is being told a lie. Seated workings. The practitioner who cannot stand, because of injury, because of chronic pain, because of a condition that affects balance or endurance, can perform working seated. The circle can be cast from a seated position by rotating the body or by moving the wheelchair in the circle. The wand can be held and moved seated. The altar can be arranged at a height that is accessible from a chair. The only difference between a standing working and a seated working is the position of the body. The intent, the tools, the procedures, all of these are the same. Silent workings. The practitioner who cannot speak, because of injury, because of a condition that affects the voice, because they are deaf and use sign language, can perform workings without vocalization. Invocations can be signed, can be written, can be formed silently in the mind and projected through the wand. The voice is powerful, but it is not essential. The essential element is the intent, and the intent can be expressed through any medium the practitioner has access to. Non-visual workings. The practitioner who cannot see, because of blindness, because of low vision, can work by touch, by sound, by smell, and by the kinesthetic sense of the body and space. The altar is arranged by touch, with each tool in a specific position that the practitioner can find without looking. The circle is walked by counting steps, or by following a rope or a cord laid on the ground. The wand is held and oriented by proprioception. The candles are replaced with auditory cues, bells, chimes, or recorded sounds that mark transitions. The practice does not require vision. It requires awareness, and awareness can be built on any combination of senses that the practitioner possesses. Section the 22nd. Ethics of the trained body. Consent, boundaries, substance use, and the body's honest signals. The practitioner's body is their own. This statement should not require elaboration, but it does, because there are traditions and teachers who treat the practitioner's body as an object to be trained, pushed, and controlled by external authority. This is not acceptable. No tradition's requirements supersede the practitioner's sovereignty over their own nervous system. No teacher has the right to demand that the practitioner perform beyond their limits, ignore their pain, or suppress their body's signals in service of the working. The practitioner has the right, and the responsibility, to set boundaries, to refuse demands that violate those boundaries, and to withdraw from any tradition or teacher that does not respect their autonomy. Consent and boundaries. The practitioner consents to the workings they perform. They do not owe that consent to anyone, and they can withdraw it at any time. If a working feels wrong, if the practitioner's body is signaling distress, if the practitioner is uncomfortable with what they are being asked to do, they should stop. They should not explain. They should not justify. They should simply stop, and they should leave if necessary. The practitioner who is told that stopping is weakness, that discomfort is part of the training, that their boundaries are obstacles to be overcome, is being manipulated, and they should leave immediately. Substance use and sobriety. Alcohol, entheogens, stimulants, and other psychoactive substances can alter consciousness, can produce trance states, and can facilitate certain kinds of inner work. But the practitioner who relies on substances to achieve trance states has not trained their nervous system. They have bypassed it. The trance produced by a substance is not the same as the trance produced by sustained practice, because the substance-induced trance is not under the practitioner's control. It cannot be entered at will, it cannot be exited at will, and it does not teach the practitioner anything about their own capacity. The practitioner who uses substances occasionally, deliberately, with a clear purpose and with full awareness of the risks, is making a choice. The practitioner who uses substances habitually, who cannot work without them, who needs them to feel that the working is real, is not making a choice. They are dependent, and dependency is not mastery. The body's honest signals. Pain, nausea, dizziness, tremor, fatigue, these are the body's signals that something is wrong. The practitioner who overrides these signals, who pushes through pain to complete the working, who interprets discomfort as a sign that they are breaking through or transcending limitations, is not demonstrating strength. They are damaging themselves. The body does not lie. When it says stop, the working must stop. When it says rest, the practitioner must rest. When it says something is wrong, the practitioner must attend to what is wrong and must not proceed until it has been addressed. The body's signals are not obstacles. They are the practitioner's primary source of feedback about whether the working is safe, whether the technique is correct, and whether the practitioner is operating within their capacity or beyond it. Keeper's final word: the practice is not about transcending the body. It is about using the body, training it, listening to it, respecting its limits, and working within those limits to produce effects that are precise, reproducible, and safe. The practitioner who treats their body as an enemy to be overcome, as a limitation to be ignored, is not advancing in the practice. They are destroying the instrument upon which the entire practice depends. The wand can be replaced. The body cannot.